back to Wargaming World and to Natal 1879 for another game of The Men Who Would Be Kings. Now, before I continue, just want to say thanks for the people who had watched and gave great comments to the previous video. So that was saving Major Cobblestone. So there was some challenges with that particular game itself, and I wanted to try and put a game in really quickly after that to see if we could look at possibly a more sort of classic setup of British defence and Zulu Attack, and see whether that would run correctly with the game itself. So I've set up this game, and we'll see how that rolls. A game with a defensive British position, well protected, some soft cover here, already in line, and they're waiting for a Zulu attack from the hills in the background there, and we've got a fairly open terrain. So I think in terms of field of fire for the British, they should be able to operate as you might expect. But I really want to see whether a full Zulu attack, how that will work and how that will run with the British. Again, in terms of the previous game that we played, we saw that there was quite a lot of influence in terms of the poor leaders from the Men Who Would Be Kings, and it makes a real impact. So I want to try and make this game as straightforward as possible, an attack and defend position, and then I'll see whether there's really such a huge impact from the leaders as we go, and see whether we make any further amendments to the game itself to see whether it improves it moving forward. We'll spend a vast amount of time on the forces themselves and the points. If you are familiar with the game, and I'll assume you are, is that British regulars are 6 points. We've got 3 units, you'll see across the table. That will be 18. If we make them all elite, takes it to 21 points, and then that gives us 3. Now, I've put the British in some advantageous positions in terms of soft cover, so it gives them a plus, and I might make 1 or 2 of them sharpshooters. But across the 24 points here, I'm going to say we've got the 3 units as elite. We're in a good defensive position, that's an advantage, and if I might use 1 or 2 of those figures at the back there in terms of the wounded if we come to it. But yeah, that's going to be around about the British position. And to make it very simple, I'm going to have 8 Zulu units, all of them 3 points. I'm not going to make anybody fierce fighters or anything like that, so that will give us a total of 8 units of 16 figures, and all of which will be 3 points each. The Zulu attack is going to be rolling down from the hills here, so we're going to roll and come across the battlefield. We're going to have what I'm going to assume is around 3 lines of infantry, can fit between the river here and then the edge of the board, and so there's going to be an element of restriction in terms of how the Zulus are able to attack, but they'll come across and engage these 3 British units. The same as I have in all of the other games previously is that I'll roll at the end of each phase to see if we have a repeat with a roll of a 6, and in terms of the amount of units can operate in each time, it'll be the same. So the British, we roll a d3 to see if we can have up to 3 units operating, and the Zulus will have only 6. So there'll always be a case, even if they max out, they'll only be able to operate with 6 units in total. Now that we understand what the game's going to be about, it's an attack and defend action, let's have a look at the leaders. So we need to work out the leadership of the forces, and it's significant in the game, and this is how it works out. So I roll 3 dice. The red dice will indicate the leadership level, and this is what we test as we go in the game. So if we roll a 1 for the British, the leadership is 7. 2 to 4, it is 6. 5 and 6, the leadership level is 5. Zulus, it's not quite as good, so 1 or 2 will be a leadership of 7. 3, 4 will be a leadership of 6. 5 and 6 is a 5. Then we have the green and the blue dice. The green dice will be the first column in terms of traits, so 1 to 6, and then in each one there is a further 6 options. So essentially, if we have a low green number and a low blue number, we're going to make sure ultimately that we have some quite considerable problems. A high green and high blue gives some extra traits which is useful for the forces. But let's start off with the first British leader. 5, 5, 5. A leadership of 5 and a fine swordsman will get an extra 2 dice during melee. Leader number 2. 1, 1, 1. Couldn't be a worse roll. We've got a leadership of 10. And finally, our third British leader. 2, 2, 1. Inexperienced leader. We have a leadership of 6, but there are no free moves. So what that really means is effectively, on each turn, when the British come to fire, it's not a free fire, they will need to do a morale test. And so, what have we really learnt from those leadership roles? Now, in the last game, the leadership made a massive difference, and I've set up the British already, quite deliberately, to see now we're going to be impacted by the leadership again, but hopefully it's not going to be as much as it was last time. Now, as you look at it, on our left flank, the British left flank, we have a good leader. So it means for free rolls the British can fire without having to make a test. Even if they did, the leadership is 5, but they're also elite troops. Now the elite troops means they have a +2, and it means they would only need a 3 to pass their tests normally. So we've got a really strong flank here, but quite the opposite as we move to the centre. Now the British get a free fire, which means that they don't have to test for fire. They have to test if they move, and that's different to the Zulus. The Zulus don't need to test to move, but they would if they needed to fire. But this position here can fire forward, there's not a problem there. But if there's a circumstance under which they need to be tested, either to move or any other action for rallying, etc., this leader is very poor and has a leadership of 10. Now, even though it's an elite force, that reduces the leadership to 8, it means that this centre is relatively weak and a problem. And it's also not vastly helped by the troops to their left, the British right flank. Now the British right flank has an inexperienced leader, so that means that although the leader is a 6, and as elites it means the main test is only a 4, the reality is that it can't fire as a free test. It means it will have to test each time, and if it's unfortunate and gets a low roll, it means it won't be able to fire at all. So we can understand about how we might look and move our British forces as a consequence, and where now our troops here on the British left flank are pivotal in terms of the success of the game. Now we have the same test for the Zulus, but this time we have 8 units. Now how is that going to be important? Well, the Zulu Attack is essentially in 3 phases. Now we'll know about, if we've watched Zulu, the film, then we'll have seen as they explain about how the Zulus attack in a focus on the horns of the buffalo. So we will have 2 units on the right and left flank and 2 in the centre with 2 in reserve, which essentially means that it will come in and attack in the centre as the horns begin to close in on the enemy. What we need to do is to see whether the Zulus can actually advance in a reasonable way. They can move forward as a free move, but how do they then impact or affect when they start to take casualties? So the leader has to be strong in order that the whole thing doesn't come to a halt. So let's have a look at our first Zulu leader. 5, 5, 2. Leadership of 5, and also it's a lucky leader, so we can re-roll one of our entire dice rolls at some point during the game. Second leader, 2, 1, 5. So this leader doesn't count in melee. We've got a leadership of 7, so we don't have his fighting factor added into a melee situation. Third leader, 2, 5, 6. Leadership of 7, but an inspirational leader, so he can re-roll each time on a rallying occasion. So if we pause on the front 3 units, I would say that's pretty good for the Zulus. That allows them to move forward. Leadership of 7 isn't ideal, however we haven't got any limitations, if you like, which stop them advancing as one of their traits. Second rank, and the unit number 4. 2, 3, 5. A leadership of 7, and although he's also a sharpshooter, it's not going to really help in this engagement. Leader number 5. 5, 4, 3. Well, we would have a good leader here on 5. However, unfortunately, he's influenced by alcohol, and therefore we need to check our tests when we need to. May be a leader of 6 or 8, depending on the roll. And number 6. 4, 6, 4. We have a very good leader here, so we've got 6 for the leader, and also he is brave, so we can remove a pin from the unit, and that could be very advantageous during the game. So we go to the centre reserve, if you like, for the Zulus with our 7th unit leader. And we have 4, 6, 6. This is going to be our leader. This is going to be a leadership of 4. So if we get the game developed as the Zulus would hope, so we've got engagements on both flanks, and then the final reserve units go in for the final kill, as it were, and this leader has a leadership of 4. And the last leader. 4, 4, 2. Traitors is a nice chap to take tea with. It's not affecting any of our rolls, so he's not too much of a character, and it's not a negative or a positive. So that's a finish for our Zulus. And I would say always the best part of the game is the first phase. So we're going to take a roll for the British to see how many units can be activated, if indeed they want to change anything for them. And so as a D3, all 3 units could be activated. Not surprisingly, I haven't looked to make a change there. I think we'll keep the British as they are. I haven't moved up the British left flank, which is the strongest flank. Let's see how they go. Let's see if the British have another phase. No, they don't. We're over to the Zulus. See how many Zulus get onto the table. We only have 1 unit so far. That's all that's happened so far. So our first Zulu unit have arrived on the hill on the Zulus' left flank. Zulus have another phase? Yes, they do. Okay, and how many units appear this time? This time it's 6. The Zulus have 6 units who can be activated, so I've moved the first on the left flank down, as you can see. 2 more have appeared there at the top, and I've just put a marker with the 3 leaders to say the other 3 units are just behind here. So that's the end of this particular phase for the Zulus, unless they roll another 6. No, they don't, so that's the end of turn 1. So, British phase, see how many units can be activated, and that's 2. The question I'm really asking myself here as the British is whether we want to move away from this defensive position and move further forward and closer to that at the middle. I think it's probably, I'm going to guess, about 8 inches, I think, further forward in terms of firing. And I think it might be advantageous to make a move and then say that this might be a position we withdraw to. So the British want to move forward. Now, when we move up to an obstacle, the idea is that you move up to it and then move over it to the next phase at no penalty. However, they are already up to that position. So I'm going to allow them to move over it at no penalty, which is 6 inches, as long as they pass their move test. Let's make sure the British move over it. Yes, they do. That's fine. They only needed a 3, and 7's fine. That's the successful move forward. No other movement or activity from the British, so I just need to re-roll to see if they have a repeat phase. And yes, they do. I'm going to move the other unit tighter to the middle section. So I need to test whether they do the move, which they do. So that's been successful, and that looks a much more solid defensive position. And do they get a 3rd phase? No, they don't. So we turn to the Zulus. The Zulu units move in turn 2. Again, just the 1. That's the 2nd unit that's moving further down the hill. Let's see whether they get another phase. No, they don't, so that ends turn 2. It's the start of turn 3, so we'll see how many units the British can use. All 3. So with all 3 of these units, we're going to move into close order, which means we need to take a test for each. So the first unit, that's fine. Now this is where it's a test for the middle unit. Remember, leadership's 10. We're elites, so we're down to 8, but it's still a difficult test. But they pass. And finally the 3rd unit, and they pass also. So all 3 units are now in close order. Do the British get another phase? Yes, they do. Well, 2 units could be activated. However, in reality, I don't really want to move the units at all, so we're just going to pass over to the Zulus. How many Zulu units are going to be activated? 5. So we had 5 Zulu units being activated. 2 have advanced now off the hill. 3rd is at the 1st level, and 2 more units now have advanced up at the top there. The Zulus have a repeat phase. No, they don't, so that's the end of turn 3. Turn 4, and the British, well, they could move 1 unit, but I'm not going to move at all, so we can move swiftly on to the Zulus. See how many Zulu units are activated. Still just the 1. So the 3rd unit have come into what will be the Zulus' first wave. They're just out of range for the British, but we need to see if we've got a return phase for the Zulus. A repeat phase? No, we don't, so that's the end of turn 4. Turn 5, the British can use 2 units. Just looking at the British position, we could move perhaps the furthest unit further forward to get a different arc with the Zulus, but just at this stage I'm going to keep it as it is. A repeat phase, which we have, we're not going to move, so I'm just going to pass over to the Zulus. The Zulus can be moved just at 2. So we've got 2 more units now going towards the bottom of the hill. and the Zulus are beginning to mass, ready to advance. The Zulus get another phase. No, they don't. That's the end of the turn. So, as we can see, it's a massed Zulu advance. We've got the British there in the distance. 3 lines of British infantry. And we'll see whether the Zulus can make a coordinated attack and impact them the best way they can. Right, well, we're about to start turn 6. However, I have actually played this game all the way through already, and I have to confess I made one huge error. I looked at the British as in close order, and I thought they got a +1 in terms of firing, but in actual fact it's a +1 for fighting. So, as you can imagine, the Zulus didn't get very far forward, as I was firing on 4s, and the Zulus got stopped fairly early on. So I'm going to start at turn 6 again, but on doing so I'm going to just point out a couple of changes I've made to the table since I've reset it. If we just take a quick look at the Zulus, the leaders are still in the same place, but I've changed some of the figures, and it's just to be practical. The figures on the hill fall down occasionally, so that I've moved the units around so that they're easier to stand, something just being a little bit more practical. And I've also put the reserve on the table. I didn't have them beforehand, so there are 2 units just at the back here. You can just see them. And then we have another unit here waiting to add to the second wave, as we had beforehand at the end of turn 5. And then we have these 3 units at the front, and they're just out of range from the British. Now, as for the British, if you remember, we have 3 units which are regulars, so that would be 6 points each, so that's 18, and I added 1 point to each of them in order that they were elite, so that took them up to 21. Now, I wanted to add some additional elements, so I've added that the middle unit, you can remember that's the one with the poor leader, they are sharpshooters. Now, that is 2 points, and that means we have 1 point remaining. So if we think about a full regular unit, has 12 figures for 6 points. I've added 3 figures, and you'll notice that each unit has a soldier with ammunition being brought to each of the units. We'll just close it on this one. I've added 1 to each of the different sections. They can't fire, but if the British begin to take casualties, they can count in the casualties. So that balances it off nicely, I think, and let's get on with turn 6. Now, the British are in position. I'm not going to move them at all, so I'm just going to go straight to the Zulus and see how many units can be activated. Okay, 5 units, and so the left and right horn can begin to move. Right, that's a good start for the Zulus. I've moved all 3 units on the flat forward. You can see the left and right horns have moved slightly in a different direction, and then they've moved in the centre from the first ledge of the hill. We've also got the second unit on the what will be the right Zulu flank, and another unit has moved down, which needs to catch up with this one on the left. So unless the Zulus have another phase, that'll be the end of the turn. So do we have another Zulu turn? No, we don't, and that's the end of the turn. No doubt we'll have some British response, but how many units can be activated? All 3. Now, all 3 British units can be activated, but the one on their left-hand side is out of range of the Zulus. However, the 2 nearest units certainly are in range, so both will fire. So, as you look at the table now, the British on the right flank will fire at the Zulus on the far left-hand side, or the Zulu left flank, and the centre will fire at the centre units. With them in close order, they'll need to fire at their nearest targets, and that's the case for both. Okay, first firing, needing 5s, the British on the right flank. That's 3 casualties. As it's long range, you need 2 for each casualty, so therefore it's 1 casualty. Let's just check if it's the leader. No, it isn't. This unit needs to take an immediate pin test. The leader has 7, we've taken 1 casualty, so we need an 8. That's a 9, they're fine. In the centre we've got sharpshooters, so we need 4s rather than 5s. That's made a difference because that means we've now got 2 casualties rather than 1. Is it the leader? Nope. So this unit needs to take a test also. The leader is 7. We've taken 2 casualties, so we need a 9. His trait is that he can re-roll rallies, not pinned, so he could be pinned, but when we do a rally test we'll re-roll then. But as it is, we need a 9. No, he is pinned. So with that fail, that unit is pinned. Do the British have another phase? No, they don't. We turn to the Zulus. How many Zulu units can be activated? That's just the 1, and also we need to do the rally test, which means that none of the units are moving. So the rally is for 8, the leader is 7, and we've got 1 point, and that's passed. However, the Zulus really need another phase in order to move forward, otherwise they're going to be under pressure again, but they don't get it. That's the end of the turn, and we pass over to the British. You turn and we'll see how many British units are going to be activated. All 3. Repeat the previous turn then, so we'll start off on the British right flank. 12 firing, needing 5s. Much more effective this time. 3 casualties in total. Does that include the leader? No, it doesn't. That requires a pin test. And that is a pass. In the centre, it's 12 needing 4s. That's 4 casualties in total. Another pin test, and that's a fail. Actually, I forgot to also test that it was the leader, which it wasn't. And do we have a British repeat phase? No, we don't. So we have a Zulu phase. How many units are going to be operating? We've got 4. We have 1 pin test to make, but other than that, we'll have 3 other units moving. So let's try with a rally. It needs an 8, remembering that if we fail we can have another go. And we'll need to, because that's a fail. If we fail on this again, we'll have to retreat by 4 inches. And we have. So with our remaining 3 moves, firstly we've got this unit moving on the left flank off the hill. Secondly, a further advance with this unit getting closer to the British unit. And thirdly, an advance into the soft cover for this unit on the right side of the right horn. The Zulus get another phase. Yes, they do. Yeah, that could be a big difference as long as it isn't a 1. 4 units. We have another rally test to do. Same unit, that's another fail. We can redo that. That's one of the traits, but it's a fail again, so it's going to be a retreat. So just a look at the tabletop looks intriguing. We've got the Zulu left flank. I've moved up the second unit behind it, so it's advancing here on the British right flank, and over on the other side there I've moved up both of those units, so it's beginning to threaten this side of the board for the British. The only frustration is the centre has now withdrawn, so the centre isn't moving and coordinating things just as well, but a very interesting point in the game. I need to check whether the Zulus have another phase. No, they don't, and that's the end of the turn. So I'm getting a little bit more nervous for the British. Let's see how many units can be activated. Well, this time it's only the 1. Well, to be sensible, if we've only got 1 unit to fire, we'll fire from the centre at the closest unit, which is now the Zulu right horn, and we've got 4s to hit. 12 dice, needing 4s. That's a lot of hits and 4 casualties. Now, is one of them the leader? No, it isn't. Now, after that, we need to do a morale test. Need 11s. No, that unit is now pinned. However, it was only one British activation. Do they have a repeat phase? No, they don't, so we pass to the Zulus. How many Zulu units can be activated? Only the one, and they need to take a morale test. The leader needs to pass this with an 8. Unfortunately, just misses, and so they have to retreat 4 inches. Problem for the Zulus is that they now have 2 units which are pinned, so even on a 1d6, we've got to test these 2 first of all before we can get moving. So we'll see if the Zulus have another phase here, but that's quite a frustration with the unit at the front there on the right hand side now being pinned. Do the Zulus have another phase? No, they don't. That's the end of the turn. With the Zulus now stalled on their right flank and at the centre, British need to concentrate now on the left horn. Only British units will do that job. And we've got all 3 who can be activated. All 3 British units can fire, so both of these 2 units will fire at the Zulus there. They're in close order, so they're firing at their nearest target. It's long range, so you need 2 casualties for removal of 1 figure. And we also need to pass a test with this inexperienced leader there, just to make sure that he can fire. And then with our unit here on the right hand side, we'll fire once again at the nearest unit as they approach. Start from the far corner. The leader is a 6. With them being elite, we require a 4. So avoid a low roll, and they're fine. 12s needing 5s. 2 casualties in total. Is it the leader? No, it isn't. So I've removed 2 figures and added a further pin. 12 more from the centre, needing 4s as sharpshooters. That's 3 casualties. Let's check the leader. It is the leader. So that becomes a leaderless unit with 3 pins. And finally we have this unit here, firing at the left flank, needing 5s. That's 2 more casualties. Is it the leader? No, it's not. Need to take a pin test. And they are pinned. The British have a return phase. No, they don't. Are off to the Zulus. How many Zulu units are now activated? 6. We've got 6 activations for the Zulus. So these 2 units have both moved further forward and are approaching the British line. I've moved this Zulu unit off the hill, and with the other 3 we've got 3 tests for rallying. So the first one is this unit which now doesn't have any leaders, so therefore it would be an 8. We've also got 3 for the pin marker, so we need an 11. And they rally? Yes, they have. We have another one here. Leadership is 7, 1 for pinned. So we need an 8. And unfortunately not, so that unit will now need to retreat by 4 inches. Finally, all the way back here, this requires an 8. This is the unit which can re-roll with rallies, but keeps failing to do so, so it's an 8 here. And it's still a fail, but we can re-roll. And another fail, so it'll retreat and start to go back up the hill. We have another Zulu phase. No, we don't, and so that's the end of the turn. At the end of the turn, obviously the British remain in their same position. We do have 3 units advancing here, 1 from the centre, 2 from the right hand side, and we've got another beginning to advance here on what is the Zulu's left flank. However, we've also got the 2 units which are still pinned. We've still got 2 units in reserve, but at the moment we'll see how the British go with their roll and whether they can stop these 3 advancing Zulu units. So it's a new turn and we need to see how many British units can be activated. And all 3. Now all the British units can fire, they can have a different target each, so we might have a situation in the end here where 5 Zulu units are pinned, and we'll begin to close off the game if that's the case. But first we need to test whether this unit can indeed fire. So it's an inexperienced leader, but it's absolutely fine, so they will fire. 12 dice, needing 5 firing at the leaderless unit. So that's 7 hits. You need 2 for each figure, so it's 3 in total, which is the casualties. There's no leader, so we're just going to test straight away to see whether the unit are pinned. 11s. We haven't got that, so they are pinned. Next unit are Sharpshooters, so they only need 4s. And that's 6 casualties. Right, so we're going to remove 3 figures, but we need to work out whether the unit is pinned. Now this is the gentleman with a bottle, so we don't know whether the leadership is 6 or 8. So 1, 2, 3, the leadership is 6. 1, 2, 3, the leadership would be 8. It's a 4, so the leadership is 6. They've taken 3 casualties, so we need to see if it's a 9. So 9 to avoid being pinned, and it's an 8, so unfortunately they are. And finally, we have 12 dice needing 5s on the 3rd unit. That's 2 figures removed. A leadership of 7. 2 casualties makes a 9, and they fail also. So I now need to see if the British have another phase. No, they don't. Well, that's been terrible for the Zulus, because now we have, if you take a look at this, we've got the front 4 units all pinned, as well as 1 on the hill. And that means that when we roll a d6, we have to be doing rallying tests. And unless we get a situation where the Zulus have a repeat phase, realistically we are going to be more or less stuck there. We haven't been able to reach the British, and it's going to be very difficult. I will continue for a little bit to see how we go, but I think for the Zulus we're not going to reach, we're not going to get there. So how many Zulu units are going to be activated? And we really need a 6. And we've only got a 2. There seems little point in trying to rally these 3 units, because they're in range of the British, and the British have to fire at their closest target, so therefore they'll continue to fire at them. So I think I'll look to try and rally this unit on the left hand side and this one at the back, in order to try and well, to some extent sacrifice these units where they're getting fired at in order to move the others further up. I think that's the only way of continuing the game. So the first leader, we need a 6 to pass, and he's passed. Second on the hill, we need an 8. He's failed, but he can re-roll. Desperately need this one to work, and it has. Right, so do the Zulus get a repeat phase? Yes, they do. Now, for the game to come to life, this needs to be a big number, but it's a 1. So we're going to test for this unit. Now we have to remember that this is the unit which has the leadership of either 6 or 8, depending on whether the gentleman is using the bottle. So let's take a look. So his leadership for this will be 8, and because we've got also 1 pin, that'll be 9. Just short. So they fail and start to withdraw. Do the Zulus get another phase? No, they don't. It's the end of the turn. We pass to the British. So let's see how many British units can be activated. Just the 1. So it would make sense that the centre unit fire, because they need 4s. So 4s with 5 dice. Only 2 casualties though. Do the British get a repeat phase? No, they don't. So we need a high number here. We've got 3 Zulu units which require rallying tests. So we certainly need 4s, 5s, 6s to start off with. But we don't, we've only got 2. try this unit. Leadership is 7, and we've got 2 pins on them, so it's 9. And that's a rally. Here we need to test this gentleman first of all, and we also have a pin. 1, 2, 3, the leadership is 8. Yes it is, plus the pin is 9. So we need 9 to rally. But he gets it. So let's see if the Zulus get a repeat phase. No, they don't. Well, the game isn't completely over because we've now got 5 advancing Zulu units who aren't pinned, and just the one that is. But unfortunately, when I'm rolling to see if we get a repeat phase, we're being unsuccessful for the Zulus, so we've still got a straight red line, and the Zulus still need to be able to advance. So let's see how we go on in this turn. How many British units are operating? And we can fire with all 3. We'll test the inexperienced leader. It'll pass, no problem. So after measuring, we'll have 2 units firing at this unit, and we'll have the inexperienced leader directing the fire on that unit over there. Let's start with 12 dice needing 4s. That's 3 casualties. I need to test whether it's actually the leader being hit. I think I've missed that off the last couple of times, but that's 3 casualties. Is it the leader? No, it isn't. So we need to have a pin test. Leadership is 7, taking 3 casualties. And that's a fail. We've got 12 dice fired at the same target needing 5s. And that's 3 more. Is it the leader? No, it isn't. I need 11 to avoid a further pin, which we don't achieve. So this unit really is reduced, taking a lot of hits there. And on the far side of the right for the Zulus, it's 5s. That's 2 further casualties. The pin test is that it's leaderless, so that's 8. They already have 1 pin, which is 9, taking 2 casualties, 11. That's a fail, so it's a further pin. The British get a repeat phase. No, they don't. How many Zulus are we able to activate? 4 in total. Well, I've moved up a second unit next to this one on the left-hand side, but with the other 3 activations, I'm going to have to test all 3 of these units. Starting here, I need a 9. That's a fail. Does the gentleman have a bottle? Well, he has a bottle. Is he using it? No, he's not. So his leadership is 6, so we need a 7. 7s to rally. And we have. And in the very small leaderless unit, it requires 10, and it fails. And in fact, with a 4, we're reduced by 2 because we've got pinned, so that's 2, and therefore it routes from the board. Do the Zulus have a repeat phase? No, they don't. That's the end of the turn. In some ways, the removal of a unit is in the advantage of the Zulus, so they don't need to test. But there's still some way off from the British line, which holds without being contacted. And we need to see if there's going to be a change of luck for the Zulus. Otherwise, we're going to get nowhere with the units, and there's going to be very much a British victory. This is now turn 14, and the game is more or less in the same situation for the British, with the Zulus coming onto them, but really struggling to get there. So I think I'm going to play this turn, see how we go, and then we might call it a day if the Zulus can't get a bit of luck in the rolls. So the first look for the Zulus will be if the British only get 1 unit activation. Let's see. Unfortunately, that's not the case. They now need for the inexperienced leader to fail his roll. But unfortunately, it's a pass. The inexperienced leader directs the fire, first of all, on this unit, needing 5s. That's 2 more casualties. Is it the leader? No, it isn't. We need to test to see if the unit is pinned. So first of all, we know that the leadership of the gentleman is 6, and we just took 2 casualties, so we need an 8. But that is an 8, so they're not pinned. Bad news is that they're now being fired at by sharpshooters, and that's a devastating effect, so that's 5 casualties. Is it the leader? No, it isn't. test for pinning. So his leadership is at 6 and 5 casualties, needs an 11 or 12. And that's pinned. Finally, the British are firing at this unit needing needing 5s to hit with 12 dice. That's just 1 casualty. Is it the leader? No, it isn't. They take a further pin. No, they don't. Do the British get another phase? No, they don't. Okay, so this is where we see whether we have any luck or not. So this needs to be a big number. 6 will do it. Well, is it going to be too late? Who knows? But these 2 units advance. Another advance from the hills, so that's a 3rd unit. And the first appearance of the reserve with actually their best leader. Firstly, can we rally here? So leadership is 7 and 2 pins is 9. No, we can't, so they'll have to withdraw. This unit over here, let's test the gentleman first of all. Affected by alcohol? No, he's not. So we need a 7 to rally, but we don't get it. Do the Zulus get a repeat phase? No, they don't. Reason why the Zulus have been so, or have struggled this game really, is that every time we've done a rally test, they've failed and pulled back so the British can change their targets, as will be the case here. So we've got 2 Zulu units approaching, getting close. But if the British had, say, 4 targets to go at, it would be much more difficult, but instead they can turn and concentrate their fire on these 2 units as they advance. So unless something quite miraculous happens, turn 15 is going to be the final turn. Let's see how many British units can operate. Just the 1. Sharpshooters, firing needing 4s. Well, has the game changed? No casualties. So this was the target, but British appear to have been firing blanks. So that could be a very lucky turn. Is that the miraculous moment I was referring to? So let's see whether the British get another phase. No, they don't. We pass to the Zulus. So what needs to happen here is that the Zulus don't roll a 1 or a 2. If they then get a 2nd phase, they can make contact. That's how close the game can get. And they've rolled a 5. Now this is the do or die moment of this game. So the Zulus have enough activations to use 5 units. 2 will have to do rally, but we can move 3. These 2 could move at the double, and the nearest unit, if they pass the test to move at the double and then make a 4, will contact the British. The 2nd unit next to them can do exactly the same thing, but they would need a 5 when they're moving. And for an extra bit of drama, the unit in the front also have a lucky move, which means that if they fail with one of their rolls, we could re-roll it. So we could potentially have 2 goes at trying to make that 4 inches, or if we fail, for example, the test to do a moving at the double, we could try that. So I think that's going to be the game. So let's have a go. So the nearest unit needs to get a 5 to pass the test to move at the double, and it's passed. It then needs to move 4, 5 or 6 inches to make contact. But it fails. However, because this particular leader has a lucky roll, I'm going to try it now. This has got to be the lucky roll. We need 4, 5 and 6 to make contact. Unlucky. The whole thing isn't completely lost. We could do a move at the double here. We need a 6 to see if we'll do it, and then we need a 5 or 6 on the roll. Will the unit do it? Yes, they will. This time it's a 5 or 6 to make contact. And they do. Third of the 5 unit activations is that I've moved this unit further up. So now I'll do the 2 morale tests before we have our melee. This one's a 9. That's a fail. This one's going to be, as before, either an 8 or a 6. Let's have a look. So it's going to be an 8 plus 1 for the pin, and it's a fail. Well, very exciting. We're at a point where We have 12 British, so we've got 12 British infantry plus their leader, so that makes 13. If you remember, we're going to take one of the casualties as well from that ammunition carrier at the back, but he doesn't fight, so that's 13. Now they're at close order, so they need 4s. The Zulus who are attacking, we have 16 men plus the leader, that's 17. They need 5s. So 13 British needing 4s. That's a total of 6 casualties. Let's test if that's the leader. No, it isn't. And we have 17 Zulus needing 5s. Fortunately, that's only 3. Let's check if it's the leader. No, it isn't. The Zulus take a pin test and are thrown back. They fail the test. Now this unit is not back. It did fail its pin test, but if you remember, this leader is brave, and so he can remove 1 pin marker on his next activation. So they can attack next time, if indeed there is a next time. The major question is, do the Zulus have another phase? Because this will make the difference really in terms of how this game goes completely. If it's a 6, then who knows? But unfortunately, it's not. That's the end of turn 15. Now, it's turn 16, and it's the British activation. How many units can be activated? That's a 3, so it's 2 units. The British have 2 units firing, although in close order it'll be the nearest unit to them, so this one will fire here, and the Sharpshooters will fire here. The unfortunate thing for the Zulus now is that it's whatever casualty is 1, so it's not 2 casualties for 1 model. And we'll see how that goes. Now we're going to have this unit here, who's just been fighting, firing at that unit there. So first of all, it's 9 men, the ones who've been fighting, needing 5s. That's just 2 casualties. Is it a leader? No, it's not. And are they pinned? No, they aren't. Sharpshooters needing 4s. That's 6 casualties. Is it the leader? No, it's not. I need a double 6 to avoid being pinned, and they are pinned. Do the British have another phase? No, they don't. Now, for the Zulus to have any chance at all in this game, and I think they have almost none, they must get a 4 with this dice, because they have to have 3 mandatory rolls for rallying. Get 4, they can make contact, potentially fight again, but if we get anything less than that, we're really struggling. 4, 5 or 6 to keep going. And it's a 3. Let's test the rallying then here. That's going to be 7 required. And that's passed. Here we require a 9. That's a fail. And because we have also have 2 pin markers on it, that's a rout and they're removed from the board. Let's have a look at the leadership of this unit. It's a 1, so the leadership is 8. We also have a pin, so 9 is required. And that's a fail again. And finally, the Zulus have got to get a repeat phase here, because if they don't, the 2 units near enough really will be flawed, so we need a 6 here. So close, but it's not. That's the end of the turn. It's a new turn and we really are clutching at straws, but I need a 1 for British activation. It's not, it's 2. So with the 2 units are going to fire again at these 2 units, and I think this really is going to close the game off. 9 needing 5 to start off with. That's 4 casualties. Is it the leader? No, it needs to get 9 or more to avoid being pinned, but he is. Then we have 12 needing 4s. And that's the whole Zulu section wiped out. And then I may as well roll to see if the British have a repeat phase. No, they don't. For completeness, how many Zulu units could operate? And just the one. Let's try and rally this unit. And with good honour, they achieve it. Do the Zulus get a repeat phase? No, they don't. And at that point, that is the game. It's a British victory. We only have a total, I think, of 5 Zulu figures here, managing to reach the British at this point. Looking down the board, we do have one more unit advancing, as we've also got at the back there just a reserve of 2 more, with 1 unit retreating. Been unsuccessful to reach the British here, and that makes a decisive British victory. Okay, well, at the end of the game, I'm satisfied to think, after replaying it, that this is a game which could have been won by either side. I think the Zulus have been unfortunate in terms of getting across, but it just needed to be, a bad roll, as we had from the unit there in the middle, and it gave them an opportunity to charge. They made contact. Unfortunately, some poor rolling means that they didn't manage to get past the British unit here, but they could have done. They could have had 2 units beginning to try and roll up the British. It would have given an opportunity potentially for the reserve to come up, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. So I think it's a close call, despite the fact that the difference in terms of casualties, and it's been a good, enjoyable game. Just leaves me to say thanks very much for watching. If you have enjoyed it, then I'd really appreciate if you put some comments in the YouTube channel, or alternatively you could go on to my own Facebook group, which is Wargaming World, or I know there are some great Facebook groups for the men who would be kings, and you want to put some comments on there. I put plenty of pictures up there of this game, and you can have your thoughts and put that across. And more than anything, if you aren't a subscriber to Wargaming World on YouTube, then please subscribe. It's great when that helps to build the channel, and then I can have conversations with people and get ideas about other scenarios and other ways of playing this game. So finally, I'll just end with some pictures of the game, and if you have any other particular suggestions for a new scenario, then please put it in, and we'll see how we can change the board and play this again in the near future. So thanks very much.